Future, here I come!
Dexter's Laboratory, Ego Trip. Now this is a personal blast from the past. When I was a kid growing up in the 1990s, Dexter's Laboratory was one of my favorite shows to watch on Cartoon Network alongside Ed, Edd n Eddy, Cow and Chicken, Johnny Bravo, the Powerpuff Girls, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and a few others during the channel's early days. With a simple formula of a boy genius who has a secret laboratory in his room, and a dumb older sister who keeps messing up his experiments, it gave the series a lot of creative opportunities to play around with many unique gadgets, fun scenarios to put Dexter in, and great comedic material.
Yes, dancing. I'd like to see you dance.
Oh, okay, but it's $50 extra.
Of course, before I continue, I know I've been critical of Genndy Tartakovsky's movie career. Or should I say, his movie career that mainly consists so far of only one franchise. But I've always admired his craftsmanship with television animation, and have been following his shows for quite some time with Samurai Jack, the original Star Wars Clone Wars, and Primal. But my personal favorite of his will always be the series that launched his animation legacy. And yes, I was there at the end of 1999 when Cartoon Network premiered Dexter's big movie, Ego Trip. Well, technically they call it a movie, but it's more of a 50-minute TV special. But if this is my excuse to revisit Dexter's Lab and talk about it in a video, then I'm pretty cool with it.
And zap, boom, pop! I'll get to see how cool I am.
I'll admit, however, that it's been years since I've seen the series, let alone Ego Trip. Maybe there will be a nostalgic layer that I have to get through so that I could properly judge this, but I thought I'd mention that first so that you know where I'm coming from when getting into this review. So now that we're about to experience the battle of the generations, will this be as much of a trip as it was when I was a kid? Or does this film have an ego bigger than Dexter's brain? Let's find out. The story. It's important to note that the movie was intended to be the series' grand finale. In fact, this is also the last time that Tartakovsky worked on Dexter before moving on to create other projects like Samurai Jack and Clone Wars. In a way, Ego Trip is to Dexter's Lab like what the SpongeBob SquarePants movie was meant for that series. And just like SpongeBob, despite the creator's plan and leaving the show afterwards, Cartoon Network decided to keep it going and handed Genndy's job to Chris Savino, where he turned the series into something mid.
I traveled to the future for this?
But for what was meant to be the show's ultimate climax, the story of Ego Trip is about Dexter discovering what's in store for him after learning that he would become the man who saved the future. So, by using his time machine, he travels to different parts of the future to meet his later self and see what happened that led the boy genius to become the hero that he is destined to be.
Dexter! The boy who saved the future! Woo!
As we see Dexter being all excited to see what the future holds for him, I can understand his sentiment because that's what makes this movie fun. It's not just to see his future, but it's to see the future in general. What I consider to be the movie's strongest aspect is the world building. The way that it presents different time periods and how either Dexter or his nemesis Mandark played a critical role in shaping it to become what it is. It even takes the time to let the viewer be immersed into this new environment and let them wonder what did Dexter or Mandark do to turn the world into that state. Along with meeting the future Dexters with how they changed over the years in their new environment. I'll even give it credit that it does well to make the connections between the different parts of the future to explain how one led to the other. Maybe I did leave with a few questions with how the time travel element is added to the mix, and if the later Dexters and Mandarks would remember that, but for the most part, it does add to how the future was well thought out. Also, there are extra components that help this to be engaging. This isn't just to see the different futures. It's also to experience what kind of action that the Dexters will get into to fight Mandark's forces, no matter how powerful he can become, and the comedy can be funny with the way that Dexter interacts with his later versions. It's true that the humor is not its top priority, and I won't say that this is a hilarious movie, but they are effective enough to make this enjoyable.
That's a prawn? Let me hear. I don't. Hey, yeah. What happened?
However, much like Dexter's visit to the future, this comes with a catch that holds it back from being as superb as the boy would expect. If I'd have to point to the film's biggest drawback, it would have to be its short running time. Yes, for a series like Dexter's Lab, making something that's 50 minutes long is a lot to work with, but I feel like Ego Trip wanted to be a lot more than that. Like, it wanted to be an actual movie with a proper length that goes over an hour. This would have greatly benefited if it had more time to explore the future, see what happened to other characters, answering more questions that could connect this all together, and further developing the personalities to have this be more of a rich experience. But as is, the storytelling feels rushed where it doesn't have time to explain itself outside of what's in the future and what happened to Dexter and Mandark. This is especially a problem if the person watching this is a newcomer to the series. Fans of the show will be fine because they're already familiar with its premise, but without that context, I can understand if this feels hard to follow.
Come on, hurry up. Time's wasted. Let's go. This is going to be great. He's not coming.
But I won't blame the team for this flaw. I get that they could only work within a set limitation, and for the most part, they were able to accomplish something fun and fascinating, especially to set this apart from the show so that this could feel bigger than just an extended episode. There could have been more to the story, but it did a good job to show a quick time-traveling adventure. The animation. While Cartoon Network presented this as a movie, they didn't fully treat this as one. If it wasn't already obvious with its running time, the visuals are pretty much on the same level as they were in the show, sticking to that Hanna-Barbera style that's limited and keeps the style simplified for the budget on the animation to stay low. And by the way, I'm not calling this a Hanna-Barbera style just to make a comparison. That's literally what it is, since it was made at Hanna-Barbera during their final years.
You remember! No! Clearly, there is only one thing left to do.
I'll admit that this is a slight letdown because it takes away a common trait of movies that come from an animated series. When a show makes a jump to features, even if it's not for the big screen, they generally come with an upgrade to their animation to visually make this feel like a bigger deal than what you may regularly watch on TV. Adding more details, richer colors, and fluid movements to present how these familiar characters would look in a movie. Ego Trip, on the other hand, was not given those materials to boost its quality, and as a result, it takes some extra time to get into the feeling that this is a bigger experience than what they usually create for Dexter's Laboratory.
The future's taking too long.
Also, this is noted to be the last Dexter's Lab project to be made with traditional cells, and I find that factor to be a bit of a mix here. On one hand, it does give the film that classic look that feels handmade, similar to the first two seasons of the show. The catch with it though is that there are times when it feels like the animation team in South Korea may have rushed the job, and it can be noticeable when the cells themselves were not cleaned.
So I must have come 9, or they were... Oh, forget it. Time travel hurts on my brain.
But of course, I'm not coming in to say that Dexter's animation sucks. In fact, the series played a significant role in establishing Cartoon Network style back in the 1990s. You see, Tartakovsky was more influenced by the abstract cartoons of UPA than the more realistic ones like Disney and some of the works of Ralph Bakshi. And with the help of the friends he made at Cal Arts like Craig McCracken, Rob Renzetti, and Paul Ruddish, he developed the look of Dexter as a throwback to that abstract style, especially to give the series a creative approach to a sci-fi theme. And with Ego Trip, it goes extra when presenting the future. Part of the immersive experience when going into these times is to see the different ways of how they are interpreted with their own use of shapes, lines, and colors. From the present that shows all the technological complexities in the lab that's in blue, to the industrialist near future that's mostly painted in yellow, to the apocalyptic further future that is surrounded in red, to the harmonious far future that is surrounded by natural greens.
Welcome to Dextopia!
Also, as I've mentioned before, there are times when the Dexters get into action, and this is where I find the movie to be interesting in a historical context. On their own, they are good. Sure, with the limited animation and the running time, they couldn't be intense to make them feel like death-defying huge battles, but they still work on their own with the creativity of the multiple Dexters using their brain power to build the technology to fight against Mandark's wrath. But the reason why I said that this is interesting is because they feel like the prototype of Tartakovsky's next projects. Since the movie goes into a lot of futuristic action, they feel like the first steps of what would later be the foundation of Samurai Jack and Clone Wars. Even when watching the robots and the Dexters fighting back, there are elements from them that feel like they would set the base of what would be later used in those shows. In terms of the animation on its own for a movie, it's simplistic to a fault where the still feels a bit like it's more of a financial choice than an artistic one. Then again, I get that it's just staying true to the series, and the film's version of the future does look pretty awesome. Yes, this was standard television animation at the time, but it was the kind that only Dexter could deliver. The characters. Honestly, there's not a lot that I could say about the characters because the movie only cares about two of them. Or should I say, two sets of them. As interesting as it would be to see some of the others from the show, like how Monkey or the Justice Friends would be in the future, the most that you get that's not either Dexter or Mandark are Dee Dee, who shows up in just a couple of scenes and only got to say her signature line,
Ooh, what does this button do?
and Dexter's parents, who only made one joke that I don't know if I should laugh or wonder how the fridge they were able to get away with it.
I don't think that's gonna fit.
Just a little more, dear. Got it. See, hon? I told you I could do it.
But when it comes to the personalities that do have a role in the story, there's not much to them. It's not the writing's fault, it's just, again, the movie is too short to flesh them out. Not to mention that it kinda expects the viewer to already know who they are prior. In the context of Ego Trip, you got Dexter, who is an egotistical boy genius, and Mandark, who is his nemesis that wants to take over the world.
Not this, Mandark. As long as I live, you will never possess the neuroatomic protocol.
However, there is another reason to why Ego Trip is considered a milestone to the series. This is one of the final times that the late Christine Cavanaugh provided the voice of Dexter before she retired and passed the role on to Candy Milo for the later seasons. And I am not exaggerating when I say that she carried this whole picture. Her performance as Dexter is already great with how lively she portrayed him and how much he is infatuated by his own intellect. But the work she did here is admirable, where she also plays the young adult Dexter and the elder Dexter, maintaining a bit of the same vocal traits, but presented as completely different personalities that have a solid comedic dynamic with one another. It's like if you take Jim Carrey's role as the Robotniks in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but add an extra layer with one more character to present Kavanaugh's impressive acting range.
Looks like a bomb hit. Does any of this ring a bell with you?
Ding dong! Nope.
I'll also give credit to Jeff Bennett voicing the adult Dexter, who captured the more action-packed muscle man tone, but also emulating the Dexter accent to keep that familiarity that it's still the boy.
Plus, the genius of me times 4 equals the cataclysmic collapse of the Overlord's empire of oppression.
And this is the unique factor to what makes these characters enjoyable. It's not about them individually, but it's how they are with each other. The way that they interact with one another and present what Dexter will become in different stages of his life, including the frail and submissive young adult Dexter, the strong and justice-bound adult Dexter, and the confused old Dexter, whom the latter I think is the funniest and supplied most of the best comedy.
I'm in! I'm in! Thanks, Billy!
And together, they present Dexter to be a lot more of a complex character with not his backstory or his arc, but what is ahead of him and meeting his future selves. In a way, this is not about who is Dexter, but rather who Dexter becomes. As for Mandark, they kinda do the same thing with him and present how he becomes this villainous overlord, and add a subtle commentary to how climbing up the social ladder is an easy way for evil to take over, presenting Mandark like Elon Musk before Elon Musk, but he doesn't have as much variety with his personalities compared to Dexter, where he's always seen as the villain of the future.
It seems my old nemesis has not only mysteriously resurfaced, but has also found a way to enlist the aid of himself from other times. No matter, let them come.
I'll give the movie that the way it uses the future is very clever when presenting the characters. Sure, it could only work with a handful of them, but by focusing on their dynamic and playing with the variants, on top of Christine Cavanaugh's wonderful performance, the film presents Dexter in a new way that keeps him as the boy genius we all know, but also as someone who becomes so much more. It may not be great as a movie, but for something that's meant to be the big finale of a fan-favorite series, this was pretty awesome. Dexter's Laboratory Ego Trip is a fun animated film that takes the classic Cartoon Network series and turns it into a creative time-traveling adventure that can provide some good action and some good laughs. While it treats itself more like a 50-minute TV special more than an actual movie, which held it back from having more quality and make its concepts better, it's generally well done with a story that's still engaging with its different visions of the future, animation that stays true to its abstract artistry, the enjoyable different versions of Dexter, and some of Christine Cavanaugh's best work as a voice actress. As someone who grew up with Dexter's Lab, I think this still holds up well, and it's a good watch for any fan of the series. However, if you haven't seen the show before, then I recommend to watch some episodes first so that you could get familiar with it. That way, you'll have an easier time when jumping into this movie. And if you enjoyed jumping into this review, then let out your inner deity by pressing some buttons such as that like and subscribe one down there. You'll be amazed by what those buttons do. For what is considered to be Cartoon Network's first movie, they still had a lot to learn at the time, but this was a pretty good first attempt. Hey guys, this is Animat, and boy was that a personal blast from the past. Now, I will confess that when analyzing Dexter's Lab Ego Trip as a movie on its own, it's not really that great. There is a lot of limitations and minimal resources that the filmmakers had to work with, in which they could only make something that could be just good and nothing more. But still, though, on the flip side, they were still able to make something good, even with all the setbacks that they had. Which honestly, it does count for something, and I will confess that maybe there is an element of nostalgia that might have influenced my experience with the feature. But still, though, I'm not going to complain about it, since it still gave me a good time. And there were some things that I will say that I enjoyed as a kid, and I still enjoy them to this day. Like, old Dexter is still as funny as I remember. But if there is one major takeaway that I got from watching Ego Trip, is that honestly, I completely understand what Genndy Tartakovsky was talking about when he said that there will never be a Dexter's Laboratory reboot. And it's mainly because of the fact that we no longer have Christine Cavanaugh. And with Dexter's Lab Ego Trip, this is one of the best examples of her talent, of the kind of performance that she could go and deliver. The kind that is often imitated, but never duplicated. Like, as I said in this review, she is one of, or if not the best thing from Ego Trip. And she already provided a great performance with Dexter, but then you add in the factor of her wide range, where she was also able to go and play as the young adult but scared Dexter, and then you also got the old and confused Dexter, where she is able to go and play all three of them at the same time, and give each of them a great comedic dynamic with one another. It really does highlight how Christine Cavanaugh really is a one-of-a-kind talent. Now, don't get me wrong though. All the other actors that provided their voice in Dexter's Lab, they're still great. And if there ever was that likelihood that they would do a Dexter's Lab reboot, I could imagine that all those other actors, they could easily come in and they could easily play their roles again and wonderfully as much as they did before. Like, Dexter's Lab had a lot of amazing talents, such as Kat Cressida, Jeff Bennett, Cass Soucy, and several others. And yes, Candy Milo is definitely a solid actress in her own right. And she is able to do Dexter very well when needed for some small appearances like Jellystone, for example. But even Candy Milo cannot be on par compared to Christine Cavanaugh, or at least in terms of playing as Dexter. Like, yeah, you could bring in another actress to go and imitate Christine Cavanaugh's performance, but that energy and that charm that Christine provided cannot be replicated by anyone whatsoever. And if you don't have Christine Cavanaugh, then you'll never make Dexter's Lab the same way that it used to be. Even if Genndy Tartakovsky decided to return and work full-time on a Dexter's Lab reboot, it just won't be the same without Christine Cavanaugh. So that's just one thing I want to go and quickly discuss. So yes, I do agree. There should never be a Dexter's Lab reboot because no one can go and provide the same kind of amazing performance as Christine Cavanaugh. All right, so with that said and done, it is now time that we shall go and move on to the next review, which is a Patreon request. And this time around, I am gonna get a request from Movie Madness. So I just want to go and say right now that if you would like to be like Movie Madness and you want to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animact. But at the same time, if you would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and that I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, what is it that Movie Madness went and requested me? What is the movie that I shall be reviewing next that they have asked me? Well, in that regard, we are going to be watching a DreamWorks movie. Yes, we're going to be entering the realm of DreamWorks, and maybe this is not necessarily one of their most popular movies, but this is the kind that is popular from time to time thanks to memes. So it's honestly a bit on the same level as B-movie in that regards whenever it would be brought up or whenever it would actually be popular. But I will say, at the same time, this is a movie that I've often gotten requests to go and watch. And trust me when I say that fans will be eating this up as much as if they would go and get all the carrot purees in the world so that they can go and eat their entire lives.